Mara tightened her grip on the small basket as she walked through the colony's supply hub. The neon lights reflected off the metallic floors, giving everything a strange, almost otherworldly glow. Outside, the alien sky burned with green auroras, reminding everyone that life on this distant planet was never ordinary. Mara kept her head low. She had learned long ago that pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. The supply hub was crowded. Humans and a few friendly alien traders moved quickly between the aisles, picking up the scarce goods that kept the colony alive. Food was expensive here. Fresh produce from Earth or Mars was almost impossible to come by, and even the hydroponic greens grown on the station were rationed tightly. Every credit counted, and Mara's pockets were empty. She glanced down at the items in her basket. She had made a mistake. A few small packets of protein bars and alien fruit that she hadn't meant to buy had slipped in. Now, standing at the checkout counter, she realized she couldn't afford them. Her fingers trembled slightly as she approached the cashier. The young man behind the counter looked up as she arrived. He was human, like her, but his eyes carried a calmness that seemed out of place in the hectic hub. His name tag read, Jalen. Mara had seen him around before. He was quiet, polite, and efficient. That was probably why the colony trusted him with such a critical job. Mara cleared her throat. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft. I need to return these." She held up the small basket, trying to make it look like a normal transaction, not a desperate plea. I can't afford them. I didn't mean to take them." Jalen studied her for a moment. He didn't smile, but he didn't frown either. He had learned to read people well, and he could tell Mara wasn't lying about her situation. The worry in her eyes, the tight grip on the basket, the slight slump of her shoulders, it all spoke louder than words. "I'm sorry," Mara continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to. It's just—" She paused, fighting back tears. She hated feeling weak in front of strangers. "I don't have enough credits. I can't pay for all this." Jalen nodded slowly. He leaned forward slightly and said in a quiet voice, "Mara, I can't let you return these." Her heart sank. "You can't?" she asked, disbelief and panic mixing in her chest. "No," Jalen said. "You keep them." Mara blinked. She stared at him, trying to understand. I can't just take them. I don't have enough money." Jalen's expression didn't change. "I know. It's okay." She shook her head, feeling a mix of confusion and shame. She wanted to refuse, to protest, but something in his voice made her pause. It wasn't pity. It wasn't judgment. It was simple understanding. Someone who knew what it meant to struggle and didn't make her feel worse for it. Mara looked around. Other shoppers were busy with their own transactions, unaware of this small drama unfolding. She felt Leela's small hand tug at her sleeve. Her daughter had been quiet, eyes wide and observant, as if she understood more than her age allowed. Lila's hunger made the situation even worse. Mara had spent the last few days skipping meals so her daughter could eat. She could see the faint shadow of hope flicker across Lila's face as she looked at the food in the basket. I can't just take this," Mara said again, her voice trembling. Jalen shook his head slowly. "You won't be taking it. I'll cover it." Mara's eyes widened. You'll pay for it?" He shrugged slightly, as if it were nothing. "Consider it a small gesture. The colony isn't just about credits and rules. Sometimes, it's about people helping people survive." She wanted to refuse, but she felt a lump rise in her throat. She had never been offered such kindness before. She had learned to hide her needs, to swallow her pride, to face the world alone. Yet here, in the middle of a busy supply hub on a distant planet, a stranger offered her what she couldn't take for herself. Mara opened her mouth, but no words came. She could feel Lila tugging at her skirt, hungry and tired. She looked down at her daughter's wide eyes, full of trust, full of hope, and she finally nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. Jalen gave a small nod. "It's okay." He processed the transaction quietly, making a minor adjustment in the system, so it appeared like an inventory correction. No one would notice, and no one needed to. The act of helping was its own reward. Mara collected the items, still holding Lila's hand tightly. She didn't know how to repay Jalen. She didn't have the credits. She didn't have much of anything. But she could try to pass on the kindness in some way, even if it was small. As they walked toward the exit, Mara's mind raced. She thought of the alien landscape outside the hub, the jagged mountains, the glowing plants, and the twin moons hanging low in the sky. Life here was harsh. Survival was difficult. Every day brought challenges that would have seemed impossible back on Earth. Yet in that one simple moment, she felt a small warmth, a light in the darkness. Outside, the wind carried a faint chill. Lila shivered, and Mara wrapped her arms around her. She felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. The food in the basket wasn't much, but it was enough to give her daughter a proper meal tonight. It was enough to remind her that even in the harshest places, humans could still care for each other. Jalen watched them leave from behind the counter. He didn't say anything to anyone. There was no announcement, no recognition. The colony had no awards for small acts of kindness. Yet he knew that sometimes, those acts were more important than any medal. Helping someone survive, helping them keep their hope, it mattered more than rules, more than credits. Mara and Lila stepped out into the alien twilight. The green auroras danced across the sky, reflecting in the icy surfaces of nearby rocks. Mara's mind wandered to her life, to the endless struggle of keeping her daughter fed and safe. She had faced so many difficulties before, but this small act of kindness gave her something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. She glanced down at Lila, who was quietly clutching a protein bar, eyes bright and grateful. Mara smiled softly. She would find a way to repay this kindness, somehow. She didn't know when, she didn't know how, but she would. Humans, she realized, had a resilience that wasn't measured by credits or resources. It was measured by courage, compassion, and the willingness to help each other, even when it wasn't easy. As they walked back to their small habitation pod, Mara felt a strange sense of determination. She would keep going, no matter how difficult life became. She would teach Lila the same lesson. That in the vast, cold reaches of the galaxy, humanity's strength lay in its ability to care, to survive together, and to never give up on kindness. And somewhere, behind the counter, Jalen returned to his work, quietly observing the flow of people, ready to help the next person who needed it. Without expectation, without reward. The colony's harsh world hadn't changed, but small sparks of humanity could still light the darkest corners. For Mara, this one night, this one act, was enough to remind her that even in a frontier world filled with struggle, compassion could still thrive. The next morning, Mara woke to the soft hum of the colony's life support systems. The small habitation pod they rented was cramped but warm. Lila lay on the thin mattress, still half asleep, her small hand clutching the protein bar from the night before. Mara watched her daughter for a moment, the way her chest rose and fell with each gentle breath. She felt a mixture of exhaustion and determination. The colony was harsh, and every day brought new challenges, but last night's kindness gave her a small spark of hope. Mara had been up before dawn, checking her meager supplies. The cupboard was nearly empty, save for the items Jalen had helped her keep. She pulled out a few of the packets and set them on the small table. Even small things like this could make the difference between a quiet day and a desperate night. She turned to Lila, who was beginning to stir. "Good morning, Lila," Mara said softly. "Good morning, Mama," Lila mumbled, rubbing her eyes. Mara offered her a packet of the protein bars. Lila's face lit up with a smile. The first real smile of the morning. She took the bar eagerly, tearing it open and taking small, careful bites. Mara's heart warmed. The small act of kindness from the night before had already made an impact not just on their stomachs, but on their spirits. After breakfast, Mara prepared to leave for the colony's work hub. She had been taking odd jobs wherever she could, repairing mechanical equipment, tending to hydroponic plants, anything that would earn her enough credits to survive. Today, she had a task helping maintain the water recycling systems. It was hard, physical work, but it paid steadily. As she stepped outside, the alien sky glimmered with the shifting auroras. The wind carried a sharp chill, and the jagged rocks surrounding the colony seemed more imposing than ever. Mara pulled her coat tighter around her and held Lila's hand firmly. Lila, curious and energetic despite the early hour, skipped beside her, marveling at the glowing flora that lined the colony's paths. At the hub, Mara was greeted by the familiar sounds of machinery and chatter. Humans and a few cooperative aliens moved in careful coordination, maintaining the colony's fragile infrastructure. She spotted Jalen near the supply room, checking inventory logs on a small tablet. Their eyes met briefly. Mara gave a subtle nod of thanks. Jalen nodded back, a faint smile appearing. No words were needed. The small connection from the night before lingered between them. Mara focused on her work, adjusting valves and inspecting conduits. The job was physically demanding, but she welcomed it. Every minute spent here meant she was one step closer to providing for Lila. Her thoughts, however, kept drifting back to the food hub, to Jalen, and to the quiet kindness he had shown. In a world so often defined by struggle, his action felt like a reminder that humans could be more than just survivors. They could be helpers, protectors, and friends. By mid-morning, the work hub had grown busy. A minor malfunction in the water recycling system caused a brief panic, but Mara remained calm. She had learned to face problems directly, to act quickly, and think clearly. Working alongside the other colonists, she helped stabilize the system. The feeling of accomplishment was brief but satisfying. Even small victories mattered in a place where the environment seemed determined to test human limits. During her lunch break, Mara found a quiet corner of the hub. She opened a small packet of the food Jalen had helped her keep. As she ate, she watched her fellow colonists interact. Many were focused only on survival, moving quickly from task to task. Yet she noticed small acts of kindness here and there, a hand offered to help lift a heavy crate, a shared word of encouragement, a smile that carried meaning beyond words. Jalen's gesture had reminded her that compassion existed, even in the harshest conditions. Her thoughts were interrupted when a fellow worker approached. It was Tarek, a mechanic she had met a few weeks ago. He had a reputation for being gruff, but his work ethic was unmatched. "Mara," he said, his voice low but firm, "the main water pump is acting up again. We'll need to adjust the pressure settings before it causes a backup." Mara nodded. "Let's check it now," she replied. Together, they worked efficiently, communicating without unnecessary words. Mara admired the human ability to cooperate under pressure. The colony's survival depended on it. When the pump was finally stabilized, Tarek clapped her on the shoulder, a rare gesture of camaraderie. "Good work," he said. Mara smiled, a genuine feeling of pride rising within her. Even small accomplishments mattered in this place. Every repaired machine, every stabilized system, every minor act of cooperation contributed to the survival of the colony and the people she cared about most, Leela. Later in the afternoon, Mara returned to the supply hub to restock on essentials. She knew she would have to be careful with her credits, but she wanted to make sure Lila had enough to eat for the next few days. As she approached the checkout, she saw Jalen again. He was helping another customer, but his eyes met hers. She offered a small wave, which he returned. When her turn came, Jalen scanned her items quickly, but there was no mention of cost. Mara realized with a small start that he had quietly adjusted her balance again. She felt a mixture of gratitude and humility. She wanted to thank him properly, but words seemed inadequate. How could she express the impact of someone's kindness in a world so often indifferent? "Thank you," she said quietly, as she gathered the items. Jalen nodded. "Take care of yourself and Lila," he replied. Mara left the hub, feeling a renewed sense of hope. The alien sky stretched wide above her, vast and intimidating, but also beautiful. She held Lila's hand and began the walk back to their pod. The small groceries felt heavier in her arms, but the weight was not burdensome. It carried a new meaning, a reminder that they were not alone, that human kindness could appear in unexpected places. Back at the pod, Mara set the groceries down and began preparing a simple meal. Lila helped, her small hands mimicking Mara's movements. They laughed quietly as they worked together, the warmth of their shared effort filling the small space. Mara realized that these small routines, these tiny moments of normalcy, were what made life worth living in such a challenging environment. After dinner, Mara sat with Lila, looking out the small window at the alien landscape. The twin moons hung low, and the auroras shimmered above the horizon. She thought about the colony, about the people she worked alongside, and about Jalen. She wondered how many others quietly helped those in need, unseen and unrecognized. In a place so often defined by struggle, these small acts of compassion seemed like lifelines. Mara felt a determination rising within her. She couldn't repay Jalen directly, not yet, but she could pay it forward. She could help others in small ways, share what little she had, and teach Lila the value of kindness, courage, and cooperation. These were the true tools for survival in a frontier world, not credits, not machines, not technology, but the human spirit. As night fell, Mara tucked Lila into bed. Her daughter's eyes closed quickly, exhausted from the day but comforted by the warmth and security Mara provided. Mara stayed beside her for a moment, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the quiet strength it gave her. She whispered softly, "We'll be okay, Lila. We have people who care, and we'll make it, one step at a time." Outside, the colony was alive with the hum of machinery and faint voices drifting on the wind. Mara knew the challenges would not stop. The harsh environment, the scarcity of resources, and the constant struggle to survive were relentless. But last night's gesture of kindness, repeated subtly throughout the day, reminded her that humanity had something the alien world could never take away: the ability to care, to protect, and to rise above the difficulties together. And somewhere in the supply hub, Jalen continued his quiet work, helping those in need without expectation. Mara understood, now more than ever, that in this strange, beautiful, and dangerous corner of the galaxy, the human heart could be the strongest force of all. The following days passed in a rhythm that was both exhausting and familiar. Mara and Lila moved through the colony like small, determined shadows, navigating the narrow metallic streets, the glowing flora, and the constant hum of machinery. The work never stopped. Supplies had to be maintained, systems repaired, and the fragile balance of life on the frontier colony had to be preserved by human hands and ingenuity. Mara's small acts of survival were becoming more deliberate now. She still worried constantly about credits and resources, but the kindness Jalen had shown her lingered in her mind. Pushing her forward, she found herself noticing other colonists who were struggling. Sometimes it was a tired worker carrying a heavy load, other times a child who had wandered too close to the machinery. Each time, she offered a helping hand, a word of encouragement, or a small practical assistance. It was a way to pay forward the kindness that had lifted her from despair. One morning, Mara arrived at the hydroponic gardens to begin her day. The plants thrived under the careful attention of the colonists, their glowing leaves and delicate roots a testament to human ingenuity. The work was repetitive but necessary. The plants supplied much of the colony's nutrients, and every task Mara completed ensured that Lila and the other children in the colony had something to eat. As she adjusted the irrigation lines, a loud alarm echoed through the gardens. Mara froze for a moment, listening to the low hum that indicated a system malfunction. She sprinted toward the source, adrenaline pushing her forward. A fellow worker, an older woman named Serena, was struggling to contain a small leak that threatened to ruin the nutrient solution. Mara quickly assessed the situation. "We need to redirect the flow before it spreads," Mara said, her voice steady. Serena looked at her with relief. Together, they worked swiftly, rerouting pipes and stabilizing the system. Mara felt a sense of satisfaction when the alarm finally stopped and the plants were safe. "Good work," Serena said, smiling. "You're calm under pressure. It makes a difference." Mara nodded, brushing sweat from her brow. It was moments like these that reminded her of the value of human resilience. No machine, no matter how advanced, could replace the ingenuity, quick thinking, and courage of a person determined to protect others. After the incident, Mara took a moment to rest, sitting beside a row of glowing ferns. She thought about Jalen, about the way he had quietly helped her, and how that small gesture had changed more than just her immediate situation. It had inspired her to notice others, to take action, to trust that the colony's people were capable of more than survival. They were capable of compassion. While she rested, a commotion began near the central hub. Mara stood, curious, and walked toward the source. A small crowd had gathered, and she saw Jalen at the center, helping an alien trader who had accidentally dropped a crate of fragile goods. He moved with calm precision, carefully placing the crates back in order, reassuring the trader. Mara watched silently, a faint smile on her lips. This was the same quiet heroism he had shown her, a willingness to act without expectation, to make life a little easier for someone else. Lila tugged at Mara's sleeve. "Mama, can we help?" she asked. Mara knelt beside her daughter. "We can," she said softly. "Even small hands can make a difference." Together, they assisted in moving some of the lighter items, earning quiet smiles from the surrounding colonists. Mara realized that even Lila, at her young age, was learning the lessons of kindness and cooperation. After the work was done, Mara walked with Jalen for a moment. The alien sky above them was alive with shifting lights, casting green and purple hues over the metallic structures of the colony. "You're good with people," Mara said cautiously. Jalen shrugged. "I've learned it's important. We all need each other here." Mara nodded, understanding. In a colony so far from Earth, so isolated from home, human connection was as vital as food or water. Without it, survival was mechanical and empty. With it, survival became meaningful. Later that evening, Mara returned to her pod with Lila. She unpacked the groceries and began preparing a modest meal. The simple routine of cooking together was comforting. Lila hummed quietly, a small tune that seemed to echo across the alien landscape. Mara felt a quiet satisfaction. Even in a harsh world, these small domestic moments were victories. They were proof that life could continue, that hope could exist. While Mara worked, she thought about the future. The colony was growing, slowly but steadily. More settlers were arriving, and with them came more challenges. New systems to maintain, new relationships to navigate, new shortages to endure. Yet, she realized, the colony was also a place of opportunity. Kindness, ingenuity, and courage could ripple outward, transforming the struggles of survival into a thriving, interconnected community. Mara made a quiet decision. She would do more than just survive. She would teach Lila these values. She would show her that helping others, noticing their struggles, and offering assistance when possible were the true markers of strength. The next morning, Mara prepared for another day at the colony's maintenance hub. As she walked through the metallic corridors, she saw small signs of her own influence. A worker she had helped the day before offered a smile and a word of encouragement. A child she had guided away from danger waved cheerfully. These small acknowledgments were subtle, but they reminded her that her efforts mattered. At the hub, Mara began inspecting the colony's atmospheric control systems. These systems were critical, ensuring that the air pressure and oxygen levels remained safe. A minor malfunction could be disastrous. As she worked, Jalen appeared, carrying tools and supplies. He gave her a brief nod before moving to assist another worker. Throughout the day, Mara noticed more instances of quiet collaboration. Colonists were helping each other more, exchanging advice and guidance. Jalen's influence was subtle but pervasive. A quiet reminder that humanity's strength lay not only in individual skill but in the willingness to support one another. By evening, Mara and Lila returned to their pod once more. Lila's eyes were tired, but her spirit remained bright. Mara served a modest meal, and they ate together in comfortable silence. The alien sky outside was now a deep indigo, the auroras fading as the moons rose higher. Mara felt a sense of peace. The day had been challenging, but it had been productive. She had learned more about the colony, about the people around her, and about the potential for kindness to spread quietly but powerfully. As she tucked Lila into bed, Mara reflected on her own growth. She had arrived at the colony, fearful and unsure, relying on the quiet generosity of Jalen. Now, she was beginning to act, to contribute, and to influence others. Even in a harsh, frontier world, humanity had the power to change its own circumstances. Mara sat by the small window, looking out at the glowing landscape. She thought about the days ahead, the challenges, the work, the constant need for vigilance. Yet she also thought about the small moments of joy. Lila's laughter, the shared meal, the smile of a grateful colonist, and the quiet heroism of people like Jalen. These were the things that made life worth living, that made the struggle meaningful. She whispered to herself, one act of kindness can change everything. In the following days, Mara noticed that more colonists were quietly helping each other. Jalen continued his subtle mentorship, showing patience and guidance to those who struggled. The small gestures of humanity were multiplying, creating a network of support that made the colony stronger. Mara realized that this was the essence of HFY, the ability of humans to survive, adapt, and flourish, not just through technology or skill, but through compassion, courage, and cooperation. Mara's bond with Lila grew stronger. Together, they faced the challenges of the colony, finding moments of joy amidst the difficulties. They learned to trust others, to accept help when offered, and to offer help in return. Mara saw that this web of human connection was as vital as any machine or system. Without it, survival would be cold and mechanical. With it, survival became meaningful, inspiring, and hopeful. That night, Mara closed her eyes with a renewed sense of purpose. She would continue to teach Lila the values of courage, resilience, and compassion. She would continue to help others wherever she could. And she would continue to honor the quiet heroism of people like Jalen, who reminded her that even in the harshest environments, humanity could shine brightly. The colony, vast and challenging, was not a place for the weak-hearted. Yet Mara understood that its true strength lay in the human heart, the ability to endure, to care, and to rise above adversity. And as she drifted into sleep, she knew that the days ahead would test her again. But she was ready. For in a world of alien landscapes, limited resources, and constant danger, humans had something no alien environment could take away: the power to act with kindness, to build connections, and to create hope. And Mara, with Lila at her side, was determined to be a part of that change. The colony had been quiet all morning, the usual hum of machinery and chatter carrying through the metallic corridors. Mara felt a strange tension in the air as she walked with Lila toward the hydroponic gardens. Something was different today. Even the auroras in the sky seemed brighter, more restless, as if the planet itself sensed the challenge to come. At the work hub, Jalen was already busy inspecting the atmospheric control systems. His eyes scanned every display, checking pressures, oxygen levels, and humidity. Mara noticed his calm focus. He had faced emergencies before, and his experience made him a quiet leader among the colonists. Even without speaking, he radiated authority and reassurance. Suddenly, alarms blared through the colony. Red lights flashed, casting long shadows across the walls. Mara's heart raced. She ran toward the source, Lila close behind. The colony's main water reservoir was under threat. A sudden rupture in the piping had caused the tanks to overflow, risking a catastrophic flood that could damage the hydroponic gardens and disrupt the oxygen systems. "Everyone, stay calm," Jalen's voice rang out, clear and commanding. He ran toward the reservoir control panel. "We need to stabilize the flow and prevent the damage from spreading." Mara didn't hesitate. She joined a group of colonists, moving quickly to redirect water and reinforce containment barriers. Lila, surprisingly calm for her age, followed Mara's instructions, carrying small sandbags to help block the flood. Mara felt a surge of pride at her daughter's bravery. Even at 5 years old, Lila was learning the importance of teamwork and courage. The work was exhausting, Water splashed over metallic floors, equipment was slippery, and the risk of injury was high. Mara's arms ached. Her hands were wet and cold. But she focused on the task at hand. The colonists moved like a single organism, each action coordinated, each person's effort magnified by cooperation. Jalen worked alongside them, adjusting valves, issuing instructions, and quietly motivating everyone. Mara noticed how his presence seemed to calm the panic, his competence giving confidence to those around him. Even the aliens in the colony, normally distant observers, assisted when asked, carrying tools or securing structures. Hours passed in a blur of sweat, water, and determination. At one point, Mara slipped on a wet patch, nearly falling into the rushing water. Jalen's hand shot out, steadying her. "Careful," he said quietly. Mara nodded, grateful for his guidance, but also for the quiet way he encouraged her without making her feel incapable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the immediate threat was contained. The water levels stabilized, the reservoirs were secure, and the hydroponic gardens had survived largely intact. The colonists, soaked and exhausted, took a moment to catch their breath. Mara looked around at the faces of the people who had worked tirelessly beside her. Sweat, dirt, and fatigue were evident on every face, but so were pride and relief. Serena, the older mechanic from the gardens, came over to Mara. "You did well," she said, her voice soft but filled with respect. "You kept your head, guided others, and worked tirelessly. That made a difference." Mara smiled, though her body ached. "We all did this together," she said. It wasn't just her effort that had saved the colony. Every hand, every mind, every small act of courage had contributed. She thought of Jalen, whose quiet heroism had inspired not just her, but countless others to act without hesitation. Later, as the alarms finally ceased and the colony settled back into its rhythm, Mara returned to her pod with Lila. They were exhausted, but the weight of accomplishment settled over them like a warm blanket. Mara unpacked a small portion of the saved supplies and prepared a modest meal. Lila ate quickly, her energy returning as she consumed the food. Mara watched her, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. Today, they had survived not just through tools or technology, but through human courage, cooperation, and compassion. After dinner, Mara and Lila sat by the small window of their pod, looking out at the alien landscape. The auroras had calmed, now painting the sky with soft, shifting colors. Mara thought about the colony, about the people who had worked alongside them, and about the small acts of kindness that had started the chain of events that saved the day. She whispered to Lila, "Do you see, Lila? Even when things seem impossible, humans can make a difference. It's not just about machines or rules. It's about caring for each other and working together." Lila nodded, her small hand holding Mara's tightly. "Like Jalen, Mama?" Mara smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, like Jalen. And like you. Today, you were brave, and you helped others. That's what makes people strong. Lila, not just muscles or skill, but heart." The next morning, the colony was calm but alert. Systems were repaired, supplies redistributed, and morale was higher than ever. Mara and Lila joined other colonists in small acts of repair and maintenance. Mara felt a quiet satisfaction in every action. She knew that each contribution mattered, no matter how small. Jalen appeared in the work hub, quietly supervising operations. Mara approached him briefly. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. Your help, it changed everything for us." Jalen shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. You acted when it mattered. You inspired others today. That's what counts." Mara nodded. She understood now that heroism in the colony wasn't about recognition or reward. It was about action, courage, and helping others when it mattered most. In the days that followed, Mara continued to work alongside the other colonists. She found herself taking on more responsibility, guiding newer settlers, and quietly mentoring those who seemed unsure. Lila accompanied her when possible, learning the value of diligence, courage, and compassion. The colony itself began to feel different. The shared experience of overcoming the crisis had strengthened bonds between humans and aliens alike. Small acts of kindness, encouragement, and cooperation spread throughout the settlement. Mara noticed it in the smiles exchanged, in the shared tools, in the willingness of people to assist without hesitation. One evening, Mara and Lila returned to their pod, weary but content. The auroras shimmered overhead. The alien sky, a reminder that even in the most distant corners of the galaxy, life could be beautiful and full of meaning. Mara looked at Lila and whispered, "We've survived today. We'll survive tomorrow. And we'll keep helping each other." Lila smiled sleepily. "Like Jalen," she murmured. Mara kissed her forehead gently. "Yes, like Jalen. And like everyone who cares." Later, Mara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had arrived at the colony uncertain, fearful, and struggling to provide for her daughter. One small act of kindness from Jalen had set a chain of events into motion that changed her life. It had given her hope, inspired action, and shown her the true strength of humanity. Mara understood that HFY, humanity was not just about survival in harsh conditions. It was about heart, courage, and the willingness to act for the benefit of others. It was about compassion, ingenuity, and the strength to rise above challenges, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As she lay down that night, Mara felt a profound sense of connection. She was part of something larger than herself, a network of humans and allies, working together to survive, thrive, and protect one another. She held Leela close, imagining a future where these values would continue to grow, where kindness and courage would ripple outward, shaping a stronger, more resilient colony. In the quiet of the night, Mara whispered a promise to herself and her daughter. They would continue to help others, to act with courage, and to honor the human spirit that had sustained them through hardship. They would carry forward the lessons learned from Jalen's quiet heroism and the collective efforts of the colony. The frontier was harsh, the challenges endless, but Mara knew that humanity's true power lay not in technology alone, nor in survival instinct, but in the heart. And in that heart, she saw a future full of hope, compassion, and courage. A world where humans could thrive, no matter how far from home they were. Mara closed her eyes, feeling Lila's small hand in hers, and allowed herself to rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tasks, and new opportunities to act with kindness and courage. But tonight, they had survived. They had grown stronger, and they had learned that even the smallest acts of humanity could change the course of lives, the fortunes of a colony, and the spirit of an entire world. The alien sky shimmered softly outside their pod, a reminder that even in a distant, unfamiliar place, the best of humanity could shine brightly, and Mara, with her daughter at her side, felt ready for whatever came next.